Well, hey, Vision. Okay, we got it going on today, new series. If you're watching in person, we had Facebook Live the first hour. So if there's something here today that speaks to you, man, go home and share it with somebody. Do you know, if we're going through a series where we're putting jerseys up on a stage, I'm excited about that. Now, I talked to my creative team. I said, I got a problem because my Michigan jersey got put way over there in the corner. And they took the Eagles jersey and put it up high. I said, no, what's up with that? Kevin Collett got the pull there, I don't know. And if you got good eyes, you can actually see on that racing jersey over there, it's got Vision Church. We were sponsored for that guy over there. And in case you don't know, this one here, this Blackhawks one, is actually from a movie. So maybe you can Google it and try to figure out what movie that's from. But hey, Game Changers, I love the sports theme. Taking 5 weeks to talk about the concept in our lives that someone can be a game changer. That's what we're talking about today. And then we're taking 4 more weeks to unpack some habits that are totally game changers in our lives. So let me talk for a minute about this concept of game changers. That in a game or in a story or in a relationship or sometimes in life we say, man, something just happened. That's a game changer. How about in sports realm? We got basketball. KJ, I know you like Steph Curry, man. He's been out. He's been injured. If you say, man, is he going to play or not play? If he plays, that's a game changer. Man, he's in there. How about Tiger Woods? He's making his comeback. You say Tiger's on a tee. Is he slicing today or is he hitting it straight? Doesn't have a slice, man. It's a game changer. He's got it. From John's team and the Yankees, this guy Chapman, and he throws 105 miles an hour. He said if he's got zip on his fastball, zip, that's a game changer. It is. Now this other one, he said, Pastor Matt, you don't usually go to a lot of musicals. But man, I go to a musical when there's a game changer involved. When Tommy Tran is in the musical, I go there. That's a game changer. That is a game changer. It is, totally. Then you think about school. We got our students. They're saying, Pastor Matt, how does this relate to me? I said, look, when you're in school and you're taking a test and it's an open book test, is that a game changer? That is a game changer for you, right? Right, Davis? It is. Think about it in a relationship. There's maybe that moment where you're wondering, do they care about me? Do they not care about me? And then suddenly a guy takes a knee and presents a ring. Man, that's a game changer, right? You put that thing on Facebook, Instagram, it's all over the world. That's a game changing moment. That really is. And then again, for my friend John, who happens to be a Giants football fan, I'm thinking, when they come out with products that are new and improved, they say in business, that's a game changer. When they come out with a giant Snuggie like that, that's a game changer in John Evans' life. It is. Now, so we got all these different things that we can think about, this concept of game changer. So if you got your takeaway card, pull that out. You got your app, open that thing up. We talk about acronyms a lot in our society. Does anybody know what GOAT stands for? Greatest of all time. Greatest of all time. So we're thinking about this game changer, this guy, Jesus, who we come together and look at and investigate his life because the rumor is he's the GOAT. He's the greatest of all time in terms of game changers. When you think about him and how he can change your eternity, he's a game changer. You think about how he can change daily moments in your life, he's a game changer. The guy we're going to dig into today to see how Jesus affected his life, his name is Saul. Now this game changer, let's unpack this definition. A game changer, as I thought about it really hard and long this week, is a game changer is a catalyst. And I love that word catalyst because I think catalyst has kind of like optimism to it. It has opportunity, has energy and passion and movement. When you put a catalyst into something, and a game changer is a catalyst that can make dramatic or even drastic change in the outcome. Change in your outcome. When you get the greatest of all time, game changer, into your life, it will make a drastic difference in your outcome. So this guy, Saul. In fact, the drastic change in him was so different, he went from being called Saul to being called Paul. He changed his name. The Bible, there's over 31,000 verses in this big old book. In 19 verses, in a tiny little chunk, 19 verses, this guy Saul went from being so opposed to Jesus, so opposed to anybody who would follow Jesus, to get into a spot where he would give his life for Jesus. What happened in those 19 verses? This GOAT, this game changer, came into Saul's world and things changed. Because Saul, he had his own plans for life. He had his own goals and value system, his own vision. We talk here at Vision about God having a vision for our life. That truly, God had a vision for Saul's life, And these 19 verses totally changed it. So let's take a look. This guy Saul, his story is told in the book of Acts. And our story will pick up in Acts 9, but to give you kind of the setting, in Acts chapter 7, this guy Stephen, who was a believer in Christ and was standing up for him, was in fact telling his story in front of a crowd, saying, I believe in Jesus. I want to live for Jesus. And I'm going to tell you how Jesus is working. And the crowd got so mad at him, they killed him in Acts chapter 7. And at the end of that chapter, you actually see Saul standing there approving of it. So let's make sure we understand right how people felt about Saul in those days. Let's say that John Evans, who was just up here, John, standing up for his faith last week, loving God, loving his family, and somebody kills him for his faith and then comes to our church. We're like, I don't know, Tina. I don't know if that guy should be coming in here. He says he's changed. He says he's different. But this guy Saul, who was literally murdering people for their faith in Acts chapter 7, Acts chapter 8, the church is scattering because of the fear, the panic, the unknown. So in Acts chapter 9, we pick up the story where it says that meanwhile, Saul, he was still breathing out murderous threats. So say murderous threats. Yeah, that's a pretty bad kind of threat. I mean, if you're thinking that he's putting out murderous threats about your son, he's putting murderous threats about your family, about your son, Cassandra up here singing, Sid playing the drums. If someone's putting out murderous threats about your son, you say, wait a second. I don't want to get near that guy. I don't want to be around that guy. That's how the church felt. They're scattering. It said, meanwhile, Saul, breathing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples, against people following Jesus. Said he went to the high priest. He asked him for letters to the synagogues in Damascus so that if he found any there who belonged to the way, that's what they called Christianity in the early days, was the way, whether men or women, he might take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. Scary time. I mean, a dangerous time for people like me or you, if you call yourself a Christian, a dangerous time. Verse 3, it says, as this guy Saul, near Damascus, on his journey, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice say to him, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Now you understand, if you are even considering that you would let God be a game changer in your life, God is going to come and talk to you. It might not be audible. It might not be something you can exactly tell is his voice, but there's going to be a nudge. That God is going to poke you and say, Jerry, say, Quentin, do you want me to be a game changer in your life? God's going to do that for you, whether it's in the first time ever, eternity's sake, or whether it's every day. And your value system, your decision making, the way you handle anxiety, God's going to poke you and say, do you want me to be a game changer in your life? Verse 5, Saul says, hey, who are you, Lord? He says, I'm Jesus whom you're persecuting, he replied. Now get up and go into the city. You'll be told what you must do. You understand? God is going to give you a step to take. He's going to say, okay, William, you want me to work in your life in a game-changing way? You got to go somewhere. You're going to have to do something. With Saul, he heard a voice, he got a command, and he had a choice. What did he say? I'm not listening to that voice. I'm not following that command. I know Saul, he's kind of following it. So our choice daily is going to be, okay, are we listening for God? Are we following him when we hear it? That he wants to be a game changer in our life. Let's see what happens. Verse 7 says, the men traveling with Saul, they stood there speechless. They heard the sound, but they didn't see anyone. Saul got up from the ground, but when he opened his eyes, he couldn't see anything. So they led him by the hand into Damascus. For 3 days he was blind, and he didn't eat or drink anything. So now you think about this. In your moment, when you're waiting to hear from God, you say, God, be a game changer in my life. Show me what to do about the job offer. Show me how to deal with my stress or how to handle the finances or the relationship. What do I do, God? Many times God says you're going to have to wait. He says, I'm talking to you. I'm going to show you something, but you're going to have to wait a day, 3 days, maybe longer, saying, God, where are you? God's still there. It's just on his timetable that he's going to do some game-changing action. Let's see what happened. So in Damascus, there was a disciple named Ananias, a guy who was following Jesus. The Lord called to him in a vision, said, Ananias. Ananias said, okay, yes, Lord. The Lord told him, go to the house of Judas on Straight Street and ask for a man from Tarsus named Saul, for he's praying. In a vision, he's seen a man named Ananias come and place his hands on him to restore his sight. Now, Ananias, I'm sure at this point, is scared. I'd be scared. I mean, we're talking about he was calling out murderous threats against Cassandra's son. Man, this guy, you want me to go talk to that guy, the murderous threats guy? Don't miss this. In your walk, if you're walking with God, there's going to be times when he whispers in your ear because he needs to hear something. He's going to whisper in your ear because he needs to hear something. And you're going to say, God, I don't know. Is that really you? Are you really saying something? God, I'm not qualified. I'm not qualified to speak for you. God, I haven't got it all figured out. I can't go speak in your name. God says, this isn't about you. This is about them. This is about a person that I'm trying to work in their life in a game-changing way. I want to work through you. And Ananias, thankfully, he listens. So he goes to Saul. He says, now first Ananias said, God, remember, I've heard many reports about this guy, all the harm he's done to your holy people in Jerusalem. He's come here with authority from the chief priest to arrest all who call on your name, but Ananias goes to him. On the way, God says, Ananias, this man, he's my chosen instrument to proclaim my name to the Gentiles and their kings and the people of Israel. So get this. God's saying to Ananias, this guy, Saul, is going to experience incredible blessing in his life. He is going to be used to bless and honor people in his life. It's going to be amazing when the game-changing happens, the journey he'll be on. So we hear that. Say, man, I want some of that. But don't miss the next verse when God simply says, I'm going to show him how much he's going to suffer for my name. So think about this. You're stepping up. You're leading your family. You're coming to church. You're singing. There's going to be some type of suffering that will come on your journey. That's part of the deal. If you want a game changer to act in your life as a catalyst to change your outcome, there's going to be some highs, and honestly, there's going to be some type of suffering. So Ananias goes to Saul. It says, Ananias went to the house and he entered it. Placing his hands on Saul, he said, Brother Saul, the Lord, Jesus, who appeared to you on the road as you were coming here, has sent me so that you may see again and be filled with the Holy Spirit. And immediately something like scales fell from Saul's eyes and he could see again. He got up and was baptized, and after taking some food, he regained his strength. Okay, so think about 19 verses. He went from murderous threats to being baptized. Okay, so say murderous threats, and say baptized. Okay, we do baptism most 3 or 4 times a year right here in the pool. So you imagine Saul. He went from murderous threats 19 verses ago to getting in a pool of water, standing here in front of believers in Jesus saying, I'm going to be baptized and stand up for Jesus. How does that happen? In 19 verses, how does that happen? To now this guy chooses to live his life in a way that he will end up writing half the New Testament. A guy who, at the end of today, you'll see these verses. He writes about change, about life change, about even giving your life to the death for Jesus. How does that type of game changing happen if it's not for the GOAT? If it's not for the greatest of all time? That Saul, his value system shifts. His vision shifts. His plans shift. You say, well, man, that was so long ago, so far ago. Does that still happen? We see it happen here at our church. In fact, I want to bring up a guy who, in our church, it's happening in him. He's changing. He hadn't just changed, but he's changing. So Tommy Jones, why don't you come on up here? And Tommy is going to share his story. And if you think, man, I could never get up there and share my story. I'd be so nervous. That's Tommy's story. He's nervous. And I'm proud of him because he did it excellent the first service. He's going to begin and share. So if you guys would, give a little hand here to Tommy Jones. All right, now, with Tommy, first of all, let's get to meet your family. All right, we got some pictures. So we're going to pull up here. Tell us who we got there.
That's me, my wife. On your left is Caitlin, my middle child, and Abigail, my oldest.
Okay, and the next picture.
That's Abby on the left. Your right, Caitlin, your left. Caitlin on this side, and Alexander on top.
Gotcha, okay. So beautiful family. And I remember the first conversation I had with Tommy. It was about 2 years ago, and it was over here next to the coffee cart after the service. He'd been invited by his brother. Came on in here, and I'm talking to him, and I can sense that he was at a crossroads. That literally, he was a spot of saying, okay, I need God to do something in my life. I want God to do something in my life. And I could sense this spark in him that God was starting. And I spoke in him. I said, Tommy, if you will commit truly to coming here and being a part of a process of being in church consistently, of getting to meet people, of serving, of listening for God, of being a part of God working in our church, said, God can totally change you for the better. And his eyes lit up, but there was also like a question there of, could God do that in me? Would God even want to do that in me? And as he left, just being honest, many times I have a conversation like that, people will leave and I'll never see him again. Maybe God will work, maybe he won't. This guy chose and said, I'm coming back. I'm going to keep coming back. And here we are, almost 2 years later, and now you're up on stage, talking about how you're changing. Not just how you've changed, because you haven't arrived yet. You haven't got all figured out, but God's changing you. So let's dig into it, okay? Let's talk about, since coming to Vision about 2 years ago, clearly, Jesus, you've been a game changer in your life. You've talked about in areas like your temper, the way you react, the way you think, the way you respond to stuff, particularly with your family, with your kids, what they're seeing. Why don't you tell us about that, kind of unpack what that changes look like in your life?
Well, before I was very angry, and I took it out on everybody. I didn't know how to handle situations. I still don't really, and I'm learning, but I handled everything with anger and force, and I would basically make my family or anyone around me subdue, or I would just go do something else. So, I just knew that wasn't right, and I've just been a lot more loving, a lot more calm, a lot more understanding. I'm kind of at a loss here. I'm really nervous.
That's good.
I'm sorry.
We've seen change. I mean, I know your brother well, seen change. And as I talk to different guys in the church that have had a chance to hang out with you, you're also rubbing off on them. That the way you process things and say, okay, what does God want me to do? How does He want me to grow? That you're changing. So I know talking to you as a dad, that certainly impacted the way you father, the way your kids look at you. What does that look like in your home? How's that feel?
Absolutely. I mean, all of my kids, especially my son, kind of having a problem with that, but they were acting like me. They were yelling, they were fighting, they were disobeying us. As you can imagine, a child's not going to have any kind of respect for someone that just yells at them all the time. And, I never hit them or anything, but I didn't really need to, because I made them feel small enough. And now they're just, it is amazing to see that. Sorry, they're, they're happy. They're not tiptoeing around the house when I come in. They're not worried about, what's Daddy going to do, or how's Daddy going to react to what I'm doing. They can just be themselves, and they're flourishing. And then I'm trying to set an example of, being loving, being understanding in every situation.
It's made a huge difference in your family. I know that. Absolutely. In talking to you and your wife and seeing your kids. With Saul and Paul, this change in him, it goes back to in Matthew chapter 4, where Jesus was talking to people about change. Jesus would say to them, you don't need to just follow a bunch of rules. You don't need to follow a complicated plan. I'm not going to map this out with a 14-step process. Jesus simply said 2 words. He said, follow me. So repeat after me. Follow me. I mean, that's a pretty good plan, isn't it? Absolutely. I mean, rather than Jesus saying to you, Tommy, if you're going to come to Vision, follow a bunch of rules, walk this plan, all these different things. No, Jesus just said, follow me. And it worked for Saul, and it's working for you. So how about a second question then? We think about this series we just finished about the life you've always wanted. We finished that a couple weeks ago, and you read the book. And if you're new here, we gave away a book. It's called The Life You Always Wanted. And if you want one, it's out in the lobby on the left as you leave, our gift to you. That book was talking about change, about transformation. And a quote that you mentioned in there, I love this. It says, now with God's help, I shall become myself. That literally, with God working in your life, you could become more of the real, authentic you. Not just a shell, not something fake. You can become you. Why don't you unpack, what has that meant to you, that quote?
Well, to me, when I was younger, I was very caring. I was very loving. I was the guy you could get advice from. I was always willing to help. I would bend over backwards. And, I didn't really have a dad to show me the way, and I kind of figured out my own way. And that's not always good. But the way things were, the way I wasn't received well by other guys, and I used to get beat up a lot. I got bullied a lot for being soft or being too sensitive, and so life hammered me into this piece of iron. I was tempered, I was hard, I was jaded, and now I feel like it's okay to be me. If I'm sensitive, that's okay. There's a reason for that. God made me a certain way, and I tried to fight that all my life, and now with His help, I can finally become myself and find out who I am.
Definitely. We've been talking about how God's used different resources in His life. I want you guys to consider these as well, whether it's attending worship. That's been a big thing. I mean, our men's retreats and getting to know some guys. You serve on the moving team, and they go out helping people move, and you're not just accomplishing a task, you're building relationships. We talked about how you have been integral in different men's lives that also need kind of a boost to stay on track. And they say, man, how are you doing? How's this going? They speak into your life, you speak into theirs. You also been seeing a Christian counselor, a great resource for guys. So we speak about those resources and how those can be beneficial to people.
Well, the group setting, I haven't been in it much because I don't live close. I live in Fort Mill, but I try to get around the guys as much as I can. But it let me know that there are the guys out there that feel the same way I do, that think about things the same way I do, and have the same fears or concerns about what should I do, and it's too hard to figure out on your own, and you can figure it out with God. God will give you the answers, but it's just so much better to be around people that know exactly what you're thinking, and you don't have to over explain things. And it was just it was a game changer to hear testimonials and to go on the men's retreat and see how real men act, and use that as an example. And the same thing with the groups.
Yeah. How about you said a couple guys in particular were encouraging you to be able to take that step into counseling. But sometimes that's, even for somebody here today, may say, man, I need help. I'm nervous. I don't know if I can even do that to go into counseling. How do those guys encourage you?
Well, just by talking, just by being themselves. I didn't want to go to counseling. I wasn't going to go to counseling because that's for weak people. That's, whatever, blah, 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 all the stuff that, that you hear. But, the biggest, toughest looking guy here actually told me about his story, and counseling was a big part of that, and doctors. And, sometimes we can't do it on our own. And God puts these people out here in positions to help us. And, but counseling has changed my life also.
That's good. So as we wrap up conversation with you, Tommy, I want you guys to realize the game changing in his life, of course, is right on his shoulders. The kids, they don't realize it, but man, the game changing happening in them because of a dad who is willing to take that step to say, okay, Jesus said, follow me, I'm going to follow him. Knowing that, man, there's those three little ones following you. There's guys at our church following you. So what's maybe the final thing you'd say to somebody who's going to take, actually, let me pause for a second. Take your Blue Connection card, the one that John was talking about. That what we're going to do today is everybody's going to have a chance to write down on their connection card one or more things that you want God to do in your life as a game changer. You say, my temper, my anxiety, this sin in my life. And if you said it's so private, you write it, fold it right in half so nobody can see it, that's fine. And you'll have a chance during our last song, we're going to take the box with this cross on it, put it right here. You can drop it off. For that person that's saying, well, Tommy, I got something to write down that, man, nobody knows about and I can't even tell anybody about. How can God help game changing happen in their life?
I don't know. Take that step, take that leap of faith, be courageous. If you ask God, He will answer you. I promise. And like Matt said, it may not be right this second, but it'll be when it needs to be. And don't be afraid.
It's good. That's courage, man. That's courage.
Have courage. Be courageous.
Okay. Well, hey, let's thank Tommy. You did great. You did really great. You just put that on stand right there. Thank you, sir. So you got your connection card. I encourage you to write something down here next couple minutes. So when we have our closing song, you can drop it in the box. I'll talk about that in a minute. Now, this guy, Saul, And again, the change in him in 19 verses, from murderous threats to all the way down in 2 Timothy, where he talks about, I'll give my life for this. You look throughout the Bible, in all these letters that Paul wrote, and let me unpack a couple of these so you can think about game-changing in Paul's life. In Philippians 3, he literally speaks to you and said, have you been in a spot where you haven't had clear purpose in your life? He says, you can go from that to having a goal, something in mind that you can chase after that has value and depth. Paul wrote that. In Ephesians 2, he says, if you've ever thought that you're an accident or a mistake or useless, he says, no, you're not. With the game changer in your life, you are God's workmanship. Never forget that. He said in Romans 7, have you been struggling with sin? He says, does it weigh you down to where sometimes you say, I am so frustrated. I want to change, but I can't change. The sin is right there with me. He says, wait a second. Thanks be to Jesus. Through him, you can get past that sin. You can do it. In Romans 8, he says, you ever felt defeated? You ever felt beaten down like you had those weeks with so many fingers up? He said, this week has just worn me down. He said, actually, you can get past defeat because you are more than conquerors. Paul wrote that as a game changer. He said in Ephesians 5, he said this, you, Sean, and you weren't just in the darkness. Michael, you weren't just in darkness. You were darkness. But now, not only are you in light, and you are light. That's the difference with the game changer. In Philippians 4 and Colossians 3, he said, are you ruled or weighed down by anxiety? Does stress and tension weigh you down? He says, actually, peace. You can have peace. When you pray with thanksgiving, you can have peace. That's what changes. In 1 Timothy 6, he kind of gets in our grill and says, wait a second, are you putting your hope in money? You putting all your hopes in your stuff? He said, no, actually, you should put your hope in God because he is certain. Oh, man, and God's with you, the game changer. He said in Philippians 4 about materialism, said, how do you feel about your car, your house, your stuff? He said, actually, you can have contentment that goes way beyond your stuff. You can learn to have contentment with the game changer. In Philippians 4 and Ephesians 6, he says, you feel weak? Somebody tell you you're weak? You feel beaten down and weak? He said, no, actually, you're strong. That in Christ, you have strength. He changes you. In 2 Timothy 1, I love this. It says, you feeling scared, timid? He said, no. That's not the spirit inside of you. God has given you a spirit of power and of love and of sound mind. That's the change. In Philippians 4, he also says, you ever feel deficient, like you don't have enough energy or time, you can't figure things out? He says, actually, my God will meet all your needs. If you lean on my God, he will meet all your needs. In 2 Corinthians 7, he says, you feeling despair? So say despair. He says, no, you can have joy. So say joy. Would you rather have despair or joy? I'd rather have joy. I'd rather have joy. He says, you can have that with the game changer. Philippians 2, he says, put away the pride. He says, put away the pride. Christ can give you the strength to have humility. And like it says in Proverbs, about God opposes the proud, gives grace to the humble. Paul says, let's be humble. Let's have humility. He says in 2 Thessalonians 3 and Romans 16, have you ever felt oppressed by the evil one? So yeah, I've felt that. He says, no. Actually, the evil one is crushed. He's crushed. In my mind, I'm thinking I'm going to Logan's and putting peanuts on the floor and crushing them. You hear that crushing sound? I'm crushing them. He said, that's how Satan is. He is crushed. Underneath the foot of Christ, underneath your foot, he is crushed. 1 Corinthians 6 says you don't have to be controlled by sin anymore. It said Christ can be your master. You can literally master yourself underneath Christ's leadership. Sin doesn't have to be your master anymore. Galatians 5, you've been in bondage? Paul said, I used to be in bondage. You say, well, how are you in bondage? Man, I was lost before. I was in bondage. Now I have freedom. It's for freedom Christ has set me free. I can have freedom. 1 Corinthians 15, it talks about death. Anybody in here ever think about death, get scared of death, get worried about death? He says, you can change your perspective. You don't have to be scared of death anymore because now death has no sting. Death is powerless because of what Jesus has done. That's what happens with a game changer. In Philippians 1 and Galatians 2, Paul speaks of himself saying, I'm no longer killing people. Now I'm giving my life for people. You say, okay, well, man, I'm not killing people. Sometimes you are in your mind. Sometimes you are in your heart. I mean, if we're being real, thinking, man, that person over there, I'm thinking things about them that's pretty close to killing them. Paul says you don't have to be like that anymore. In fact, you can die for Christ. And in 2 Timothy 4, as he wraps up his life, Paul, who used to be breathing out murderous threats, now says, I'm already being poured out like a drink offering. The time for my departure is near. I have fought a good fight, and it's a different fight than you used to fight. It's a totally different fight now. I've fought the good fight. I've finished the race. I've kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness. Those 19 verses totally changed the crown he was going after. It changed everything for him. Now there's in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. And not only to me, but also to all of us who long for his appearing. We can go after that crown. It's a different crown. So our bottom line, that Jesus absolutely is the GOAT. He is the greatest of all time. He is the game changer that truly can drastically, dramatically, incredibly change your outcome. He wants to do that. He wants you to be different for him because of his influence in your life for eternity and every day.